the volume. Stop recording. Look, I've shaved my hair. It'll take a while for us all to get used to. I'm very bald. I didn't realise I was quite that bald until just now. My beard actually looks longer than my hair. I don't quite know how that happened. Anyway, one thing I wanted to say to the world is, you have to understand, I never know who knows what. Like someone insults you or something in the street or in the hospital or something, and you think, do they know about Movember? Do they know I'm the Movember man? Do they know there's a super injunction? Have they ever heard any bits of recording? Which bits of recording have they heard? Have they ever heard any good bits of recording? Is it just the case that all the recording is out in the public domain, which I very much doubt? Because I'd be sort of made king of England or something if that was the case. Well, Prime Minister's Britain. So it's like it's difficult. People are with someone. I mean, I've had loads of people call me a wanker in the streets, and you think, I don't know why. They could just be judging it on like what I'm wearing. I mean, they may not even know who I am. It's very confusing. Or they may know I'm the Movember man, they may know there's a super injunction, they may know. I mean, and then it's the same with all the celebrities on telly and all these footballers and singers, pop stars and so on. I don't know whether they obviously know I'm the Movember man, but do they know there's a super injunction? There's probably at least some who don't, but then you don't know which ones do and which ones don't, it's very confusing. So you never know how to kind of respond. I mean, I try and just sort of rise above it. Hopefully not in an aloof way, just in a sort of, there's not really any point caring type way, I'm glad to have got that off my chest. I don't know how well I've explained it. I'll be like sitting in that place I used to frequent outside the play, and then someone will walk past and call me some name, which a lot of the time I can't even hear what one they're calling me. And then you're sort of thinking, how much do they know about me? Are they just going on like to gossip about me around Shrewsbury, or do they know all about the super injunction and so on? So it gets very difficult. I mean, I try and just rise above. And sort of not blame people, because if you start sort of blaming people for being horrible to you, then you're in serious shit. You just have to. You don't have a God-given right for people to be nice to you. I suppose it's like Cobain called his biggest album Nevermind. I think he meant he didn't just mean Nevermind. He meant oh, never mind what people say. Do you look like bald and all? One thing about my brow though is Philip Clement's got the same brow, so that makes me feel a whole lot better about the whole thing. I've got a Philip Clement-esque thinking man's brow. I haven't got a Philip Clement-esque face. That my face is more big and well, I'll try and do that thing where I relax my face again. Wait. See, it does go nicer there. It does look a bit. But anyway, I'm glad to have got that off my chest. And then people at actually at the hospital will have been said all sorts of shit about me because they will have been played bits of voicemail, but they'll have been played very carefully selected bits to try and make me look however the people are trying to make me look, you know. I mean, the only way they could get me put in prison was to splice bits together on a computer, you know. That's how crazy it got. Splice all bits of different message together on a computer, so they may even have been played some of those bits, you know. I mean, I think some things happened when I absconded because they all had these really like sort of shocked, like not even shocked, astonished. I don't even know how you describe it. Sort of disturbed, astonished looks on their faces when I got back, but only the ones like the psychologists and people like that, not the ones like the healthcare assistants who wouldn't necessarily be let in so much on what had happened, you know. So it is strange. So it can't just be that rambling Twitter live video I made. Because that well, I mean it was like I said in that tweet afterwards, it was very visual and I don't look so good now. It was a very visual heart. I mean, it all seemed to make sense. At the time I was thinking, oh, this is good. And I suppose really there isn't really any kind of factual fact about the way anyone looks anyway, because different people find different people attractive. And it kind of all depends how you are. Like my hair probably looks a lot more rubbish now than it did then. But as I look at this now, I look better now in this than I did in the when I watched back over that one I did when I was drunk. God, when I was a dog eating pig. I mean, I was slurring my words and burping and so on. But I knew that at the time, and I was sort of thinking I had slightly off my head. But then I was sort of thinking I can just make more later on. Hopefully, when I've got some weed, and then they'll make more sense. Weed very definitely does help me express myself better. I mean, alcohol does sometimes, but it's very like depends what mood you're in and how much you've had. And sometimes if you drink too much, you get really rubbish at expressing yourself again. Like the crap drug alcohol. I mean, it's weird that it's the only one that's legal because it's the one that does the most physical damage. And it's the only one that really sort of properly affects your willpower. Like you do things when you're drunk, bad things that you wouldn't do otherwise. You think, hang on a minute, I wouldn't do this if I was sober, but then you still do it. You don't get that with a drug like cannabis or ecstasy. I was writing to Keith Lemon one time when I'd had a split at my old hospital. I'm anti-establishment figure, rail against the establishment. I speak to wealth and power and privilege. I think that's really fun. I'm an anti-establishment figure, just to be clear. I rail against the establishment. I speak to wealth and power and privilege. It's just a matter of like if I was smoking it every day for like a long period of time, would it make me go all like withdrawn and kind of paranoid and nervous in the end? You'd have to make sure and have time off it, but it's always tempting not to have time off it because it makes you enjoy yourself so much more. Got not real much interest in any other drugs. Like coke, I can take or leave. Crack, I can take or leave. Heroin, I have probably done when I absconded, and I've probably been smoked with it other times. But I've got a desire to do heroin. I mean, that's the last thing I need, an opiate addiction on the top of everything else. And then speed, I've never done. Acid, I've only done once, but I mean, that's similar to cannabis anyway. Possibly taking ecstasy but when I'm stoned would be the only other drug I'd want to take. But then, if you start getting a bit panicky on the ecstasy, I'd probably end up going and getting some beers to calm myself down, so that wouldn't be good. God, I do look so big and saggy face. Got big saggy face. That's actually the right side of my face, and that's left side of my face. Um, I'm just gonna light my fire. That was quite common. I was dreaming about Deborah Mead last night. I've had like 3, 4, 5 dreams about her recently. God, look at that little. Uh, can't remember what I was going to say about it because I sent her a LinkedIn message. What was I going to say about Oh yeah, that's one business idea I had, as well as cheese mail, noodle chunks. I mean, I think I already talked about that. I'll probably repeat myself in these videos. Little chunks of meat or fish or cheese in like a little bag, like fridge raiders, except more aimed at the budget market, smaller than fridge raiders, and without the uh, coating on to be fit in pot noodles and other brands of noodles that are available. That could be a real winner. So someone goes in, buys a pot noodle, and then think, oh, I'll just get some noodle chunks with it. And then they buy a bag of noodle chunks for like sort of 59p or something from the refrigerator section. Because you sort of think, well, people eat noodles on the go, so they wouldn't be able to keep them in the fridge. But then you think about it, actually, you've got to have hot water to make a pot noodle. So people probably do mostly eat them when they're at home or at work, in which case there's going to be a fridge at work. And then that's why I thought Deborah Mead, because this other idea I had, tellies on your roof or some sort of projector, but better a telly on your roof, on the roof, on the ceiling of your bed, above your bed. Because you think, well, that's a crap idea, but then think about it, you'd be able to lie on your back watching telly as you fell asleep. You could have YouTube on there, BBC iPlayer. Good. I mean, obviously, like, it's not, it wouldn't be like a massive thing that would sell billions, but there probably would be a market for it. I've got a couple more business ideas that are on top of cheese meal. Cheese meal would have the advantage of like being a real business, but also being a silly idea that someone invented as a joke. So that's my preferred business solution. But anyway, in the dream, Deborah Mead was say yes again. So she's showing an interest in. Because I had this one like about a year ago where I meet her and I say, you'll see me again. Telly, all at some sort of projector, but then, I mean, I suppose most people have blank ceilings, don't they? But then how would you project it? You'd have to do it from the side and make it like a trapezoid or whatever. Or just an actual, like, customised telly attached to the ceiling, if that's possible. there's always this chopper that hovers around above the hospital. It's like the what's it called, hospital chopper, but sometimes it hovers really low. And then I had a dream that it hovered down to about literally like sort of 7 meters above our garden of our wall. What is that here again? It's turned up again. Oh no, it's flying off. I don't know if I'd want to get kidnapped by the Russians. It's difficult. I mean, just to be really, really controversial and say something you can't really say in this country, like, well, you can say the word tit in the north. You can say the word tit in the north of Britain. You can't say it in London. But it's weird because I think Vladimir Putin gets a bad press, and it's not through any like desire for Britain to be communist or anything. It's just like when you actually see an extended, section of him talking on YouTube or something, he comes across as quite sensible. But the bits they show on BBC News are where he's pulling slightly sort of megalomaniacal facial expressions and so on. And I don't know because I don't know him personally, and kind of I can't speak Russian, so there may be kind of extra things you could pick up if you could speak Russian. But all this stuff Keir Starmer says about him throwing people like meat into the meat grinder and so on, all his troops in Ukraine. I mean, it's really just like irresponsible because it's like they've they've got like about sort of like 1,000 times as many nuclear weapons as us. I mean, it's like, and also it's like we don't really have an army except for nuclear weapons. They're going around kind of throwing our weight. Imagine what other countries in Europe who don't have nuclear weapons think of that. Us throwing our weight around when we're one of the few that have got a few kind of crappy old-fashioned nuclear weapons, and we've got no real way of fighting Russia, you know. And then another thing is talking about, you know, Vladimir Putin throwing his men into the meat grinder to invade Ukraine. I mean, we're throwing Ukrainians into the meat grinder. We don't even fight for ourselves. I do feel bad things. I'm too old to fight, so it's very easy for me to say. But, I mean, we're doing the same thing with Ukrainians. We're not I mean, obviously, I don't know all the details, and all these politicians will have security briefings and so on, and will know possibly a lot more about it than me. But if you ever, I mean, there was one time the BBC showed an actual news conference with Vladimir Putin for a good, 45 minutes or something. And he came across as very reasonable and sensible, They were talking about someone asked him a question about human rights in Russia, and he was talking about the storming of the Capitol building. He was saying they all got 20-25 year sentences. They're all called homegrown terrorists. An unarmed woman was shot dead. They think our politicians are the megalomaniacal dictators. Vladimir Putin actually genuinely thinks, I'm almost certain, that America has a worse human rights record than Russia. And obviously all these countries have their secret services who, I mean, to some degree, I never know how much of a degree, but to some degree they run the countries anyway, because they say, oh, to the politicians, they say, oh, we have to do this for security reasons, and the politicians can't exactly sort of go, well, we know better than you. But I think Vladimir Putin is actually a bit more genuinely in charge of his country than some of our politicians. And if you could know how clever some of these, you know, I suppose what would you call them, deep state types are. I mean, I've known a lot of them. Well, they're just on another level compared to like a celebrity or some. I mean, all that stuff about. I mean, it's just the way he's presented. I mean, because they do have elections in Russia and they could be rigged. I suppose I've got no real evidence either way as to whether they're rigged. Our media always says they're rigged without providing any evidence. But I mean, I would imagine if you watched Russian news, it would say, "Oh, elections are rigged." It's just these, like what I've talked about on Twitter. Countries like different communities separating off into little kind of separate communities and becoming very paranoid and distrustful of each other. I mean, imagine what someone like Spain would think of, or someone even nearer to us, like Belgium or Spain or somewhere, would think of Keir Starmer making all these grandiose statements about, how evil Vladimir Putin is. When we've just got these sort of crummy kind of 30-year-old nuclear weapons, and we don't really have any other way of fighting him. Our army is tiny compared to that. I mean, I don't know everything about it. I don't know everything. Some of this could be wrong. I'm just sort of trying to start a conversation a bit. Alright. I mean, when he said that, it did make me think. I mean, there was someone asked him a question about human rights in Russia, and he just started talking about, the Capitol Hill riot he sort of said, they're all called homegrown terrorists. They all got, 20, 25 year sentences. An unarmed woman was shot dead. I mean, imagine if that happened in Russia, that exact same scenario. Imagine what we'd be saying. It's just worth thinking about. But obviously, they're not really communist, are they? I'm not sort of suggesting that we have a communist system with no elections in Britain. Obviously, everything's got to be done by election. But, you know, they do have elections in Russia. I don't know how rigged they are, 'cause I'm not an expert on Russian internal politics. But, and obviously, it's very easy for me to say we're throwing Ukrainians into the meat grinder because I'm like 45, so I'm too old to fight. That's why I don't have to worry about being called up myself. So I take that completely on board. I mean, maybe I'll leave it there as I was talking about that goes, but just got a text off my brother, so I'll see what that says. I could only see the beginning of